Okay. Thanks, folks.
Hi, I'm Regina Chichizola. I'm with Save California Salmon. We have other people here too. We have Lise and Emma. Anyway, so they're here too. But I just wanted to talk fairly quickly about a couple things, and I think we're like a little behind time. And I want to hear John, so we'll move it on. But you know, a lot of us know each other here, so we can stay in conversation. But I did want to say, one, we're here to talk about Klamath Dam removal, so I'll talk a little bit about that. But I think it's really good and important that Ken brought up the tributaries and how critically important it is to protect our tributaries, especially because dam removal is taking forever. We expected these dams out something like 10 years ago now for the first time. And it's just like, so the stalling has become a strategy of power companies within these Ferc processes. And I think a lot of us who work on trying to get dams out have seen this, where, you know, there's always a reason it has to take longer and longer, but every year that company is still making money. And while that's happening, our salmon, and so I'm going to go into what it took to get to Klamath Dam removal a little, but while that's happening, our rivers are going dry because of the diversions, and our fish are dying. We're losing the majority. Luckily, this weather has saved a lot of the baby fish this year in the Klamath River, but we're losing almost all of the juvenile salmon in the Klamath River every single year. And they don't float the way when we have a big adult fish kill, so it's an invisible extinction event, level event happening almost every year in the Klamath River. And it is tied to the dams, but it's also tied to lack of water and habitat. And I think one of the things I wanted to mention really quickly too is that you know, I know that in Oregon and a lot of places other people are from, we are looking at having good storage and good water, but here we're not. We're still considered in the middle of a critical drought. And because of the way that California's water rights system is set up, it was set up, you know, during the mining age, and it goes through the state, and it's meant so that one landholder can have the rights to an entire river system. And those landholders are not people of color. They're not Native people. They are, you know, the miners that came here and the agriculture people who came here and settled the land and, you know, killed the other people who are on the land. And those are still the people who have senior water rights here because the tribes have not sued for them under the water rights adjudication system. If the tribes did, they ultimately would have senior water rights because that's how water rights works. But so right now, there's a lot of laws within like use of water and beneficial uses and things like that. So really, we should be able to argue, and we do, that letting the salmon go extinct so that a couple of alfalfa farmers in the Shasta River can flood irrigate alfalfa during a drought. You know, we should be able to argue that, but unfortunately the powers that be, the governor, the California water boards are not on our side of this. And so we've really had to advocate very hard over the last couple of years. And last year, for the first time ever in the late summer, we were able to get the water cut off in the Scott and Shasta River, where the majority of the Klamath salmon are now coming from. And until those dams come down, they are our strongholds and our only hope. You know, this is taking so long that we are looking at now springers are listed under the Endangered Species Act in California. And that only happened mainly because Native youth got super active and really pressured the state to make it happen, and because the Krug tribe filed petitions to make it happen. So what we're seeing, and the same thing happened with the Klamath tribe in Oregon, where the tribes that are, you know, senior water right holders, they're the people who have fishing rights or should have fishing rights, are fighting against their own interests to be able to eat salmon because they want them to survive. And if we don't deal with our tributaries in the Klamath, even after dam removal, the salmon aren't going to make it. I mean, the Trinity River right now, because of the diversions that they allow to the Central Valley, I don't know if people are aware of the Trinity River is the largest tributary of the Klamath, and it has a system of dams that takes most of its water to the Central Valley to farmers like Westlands Water District 200-300 miles away. The storage on those reservoirs is at 33% right now because there's no carryover storage requirements for that river, so they can keep draining it. Even though tribes fought, the Hupa tribe and Yurok tribes fought for 50 years, I think, to get restored flows in that river. And we actually now have, through advocacy and through using the best science, we do have a plan called the Lower Klamath Long-Term Plan that's to stop adult fish kills in the Klamath River. So Trinity River is released when there's a fish kill about to happen from fish disease for adult salmon in the Klamath. But if the Trinity River storage isn't there, there's no cold water to release. So we're looking at, if the weather changes extremely, we can have a large adult salmon kill this year in the Klamath River because there's not water to release from the Trinity. And then hopefully the adjudications on the Scott and Shasta, the curtailments will hold for the farmers on the Scott and Shasta, but during most years, even good years, those farmers suck those rivers dry. And they literally kill thousands of coho all the time. And there's just no consequences. So, as river management people, as agency people, we do need to figure out consequences. Like that they put millions of dollars, like Kenneth brought up, in the Sacramento River to restoring the spring salmon. That was the only spring salmon run in the state of California that was actually growing and being restored. And they allowed the entire run to die. I think like 1,000 fish made it. 19,000 adult salmon died. There was like one story in the newspaper about it. And nothing happened to PG&E for doing that. So, we need to, so the way we got, I'll get onto Klamath Dam removal now, but the way we got to Klamath Dam removal, no one said that it was even an option. Scottish Power owned the dams at first. They just went for a typical relicensing. The tribes went and protested their shareholders meeting, and then also a bunch of people went to Sacramento and were like, no, these dams aren't being relicensed, and it was grassroots effort and tribal government effort to do these protests and these demonstrations saying, no, we're not keeping these dams. And so Scottish Power sold the dams. They didn't want any part of it to Pacific Power, which is owned by Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett, richest man in the world. And so then the tribes mainly, I know I was sat down on the river bar by what is now a tribal elder and was told these dams, and Emma's grandma was a big part of this too, was like, these dams are coming out and we're making them come out. And a lot of the agency people were like, no, this is never going to happen. Nothing like this has ever happened. I think maybe the Elwha Dam was just starting to be like approved for removal then. So 4 dams, it was new. And everyone said it wasn't going to happen. And so, the tribes and the different NGOs, some of them that are here, Friends of the River, put in so much effort to make sure the science was there. It wasn't like Fish and Game was like, we're going to make sure the science is there to show. We had to prove every little thing. We had to prove the spring salmon were above the dam. We had to prove that the dams are causing the toxic algae that turn the river green every year and make it so you cannot have contact with it without getting sick for months. Every year. That's what the river is like now. We had to prove that toxic algae was a problem. We had to prove that the dams made that problem. We had to sue the water board saying it should be listed as an EPA listed pollutant because they wouldn't do it. So it really took like the tribes making the best available science possible. It took people like American Whitewater lobbying. It took people like Friends of the River really knowing the Ferc process well. But then it really took the commitments of our communities and the tribes, because there have been dozens of protests across the nation and the world over Klamath Dam removal. The last time Pacific Corps tried to get out of Klamath Dam removal about 1.5 years ago, tens of thousands of people participated in calling Pacific Corps, calling Berkshire Hathaway, doing protests at like all their shareholders' companies. People drove from Hoopa, California to Warren Buffett's house. People are so committed to this. And so sometimes in here, because it's taking so long, there'll be locals that are like, I don't believe this is even happening anymore. Like, this is just taking so long. We're now on our 3rd public comment period under the Ferc process for Klamath Dam removal. And now the proposal is surrender the dams, bring them to the Klamath River Renewal Corporation, and take them down, where originally the proposal was to keep the dams in place. But, a lot of people here are discouraged. They're like, we've gone to Scotland, we've gone to Omaha 3 times, we've gone to Portland 4 times, we've gone to Warren Buffett's house. When Pacific Corps tried to go up the Klamath River about 2 years ago now, after they said they wouldn't remove the dams, fishermen blockaded the river and made them listen to them tell stories about what it meant to lose a salmon before they could go by. So it's like, it's been so much pressure, so much action, and people are kind of losing hope here. But what I bring up is I know the tribes aren't giving up. And I know that people, like some of these nonprofits that work here, are not giving up. So it's kind of like Klamath dams are coming down because we're not going to give them a choice. Like the science is in, and thank you all. I know so many people here are doing really amazing studies on what it's going to take to bring the springers back, what it's going to take to get these dams down, what it's going to take to deal with these extreme nutrient pollution issues that also cause these toxic algae blooms and fish kills. But ultimately, the people are not giving up here. Like Ken said, this is like people are so committed to making sure that the salmon make it. And so we're going to make this happen, but in the meanwhile, we also really need help to make sure the Scott and Shasta make it, and the Trinity River makes it, and that all the fish don't die off in the meanwhile, because over the time that we've been dealing with this, we've gone from people having full smokehouses every year to people sharing like a couple fish, or like really having to try hard to get fish for ceremonies. Like there's hardly any fish left, and it's because we have extinction level events almost every year, and it doesn't need to happen. People are ignoring that these things are happening. Everyone knows about the Klamath dams, but who knows that like almost every year our fish die, or that the Scott and Shasta River are completely dewatered to flood irrigate alfalfa because we haven't actually dealt with our water rights laws and making sure to update them to look at justice and climate change. And now we're still dealing with laws that are from the early 1900s, and adjudications that are from the early 1900s. And so that's what we're dealing with. So, we do work all over the state. We work in, other rivers too, but we are working with the Water Board to update their water rights system, and to pressure them to update the water rights system to deal with like equality and climate change and things like that. And there is now a resolution through the California Water Board that's a racial equality and inclusion resolution, and is supposed to help deal with issues like this, because ultimately, when every Klamath Dam meeting we went to was at least 8 hours away. Some of them were on the East Coast, and so how does a normal working person who live here engage? Like everyone cares about the fish so much. If you go in the schools and talk to the kids, a lot of them have never even eaten salmon, which is just a tragedy, or only had a few bites here and there, but they all know that it's their place to take care of that it's their place to take care of the river and the fish, and they care so much. But like, how does a family that lives here that's struggling, having the town burned down and everything, go to a water board meeting that's 8 hours away? Like, how is that fair? It's during a weekday, you have to take days off of work. So it's, how do we engage and make sure we have our future scientists, our future leaders? And it's got to come from so many different places.
We have to change the laws in the state. We have to make the Ferc laws be better. We have to make sure that the answer to climate change is not build many more dams. Like right now, I have stickers over there to stop Sites Reservoir, but they want to make a new reservoir that can impact the Trinity River and the Sacramento River and take much more water out of there right now. So the answer to climate change coming from our politicians is more dams, more reservoirs. So, and how do we fight that? People feel really worked over. But one of the things that's been really great is we have made this Advocacy and Water Protection in Native California curriculum. It's a high school curriculum, and all the presenters and people
Who give lessons are Native people who are scientists. There's a couple non-Native people too, but they're scientists, professors, ceremonial leaders, cultural practitioners that are helping bring fire back to the ground in this area. And we're actually working to get it into the school system. So it is being actually taught in Humboldt County high schools now. And that's mainly because of the activism of the Native students. They were like, we are sick of learning about the gold rush as a good thing. We want to actually have our science classes talk about traditional sciences, and to talk about, making the world a better place. But we also teach them the tools they know to do public comments. We work as translators on these Ferc systems,
because what normal person can read a Ferc document and understand anything about that?
Ron?
Well, I don't think we could say Ron is a normal person. Ron is also a translator of the different language that is Ferc into. Ron's an icon, okay. But so anyway, I think it's just really important that we realize that this dam removal situation, yes, the lawyers, the agencies, the scientists had so much to do with why the dams are coming down, and all these studies are so critically important. But in my opinion, the people are why the dams are coming down. The people who live here, the people who work hard. We just had a Salmon Run come through here, 19th year. It was started by high school students in Hoopa after the Klamath fish kill because it broke the hearts of the local community and they needed to do something. Out of the pain, needed to come something good. And so they started the Salmon Run. It was the 19th year this year, and hundreds of children, mainly Native children, ran in the run this year. They ran all the way from the mouth of the Klamath up the Trinity River and above the dams to Chiloquin. To the headwaters of the Klamath, that's like 320 miles more if you count the Trinity section. And some of the kids were like the local basketball team ran 10 miles and they're like 8 and 9 year olds. But they were willing to do that, to work that hard, to help bring the salmon back. And so that's kind of like the commitment from the community. And so the reason I brought up the education work and, that we have a lot of youth interns, and Paul's going to talk later about the work to get more Native youth into river rafting and make sure that they're the ones who can enjoy the restored Klamath River. But the reason that's so critically important is because this is an intergenerational struggle. Some of the people, at rallies, it's grandparents and kids and aunts and uncles, and it's everyone who relies on the fish making it happen. And as I've seen this Klamath dam removal process kind of move on and on and on, some of those youth are now the scientists with PhDs that are doing these studies. Our intern, Brooke Thompson, who's moving to the Yurok tribe this year, she's an engineer now. She just got her engineering degree, and she's about to get her PhD in environmental studies. And she said she wants to run the water board, and she wants to make sure that the water board is actually incorporating traditional ecological knowledge into their decisions. And so that's the power of our local youth if they get the opportunities they need. And our local communities, they can't get the 4 largest dams in the world taken down, which everyone said it was impossible. And luckily, now the agency people and the recreational people and everything are coming to the right sides, and we're all working together to make this happen. But it's going to take a lot more. It's going to take the restoration of the upper basin and the wetlands. It's going to take dealing with the nutrients. It's going to take dealing with the broken water rights system that's only meant for the super powerful in this state. So don't quit. We're going to need a lot more to make this right. And it's going to take getting fire back on the ground in a real way so that our most ecologically important watersheds like some of our most ecologically important and traditionally important watersheds like Indian Creek don't burn up in a disaster situation. So I think that's probably good for me. That was a lot of talking. But we're always working to get youth on the river, to get good curriculum into schools, to make sure that everyone's learning about science, but like in a good way, and making sure that we're supporting the local tribal communities. Our board is 95% Native people from California, almost all women, scientists and professors and things like that. We are a largely youth-led organization too, and I'm not a youth or tribal, so I don't know why I'm talking, but I do really support these communities and we'll work hard to make sure these dams come down and these watersheds are restored. And we also work in the Sacramento River and the Eel River. We're getting the Eel River dams down next. We're going to hopefully get like Battle Creek and Butte Creek dams down on the Sacramento, make sure that the fish can get back to Winnemucca and Pitt River people above the Shasta Dam. We really need to do a lot and to deal with the climate change issue and to deal with these issues and taking down dams, getting fish back to their habitats, restoring water rights, but also empowering the people that are the most affected to be the leaders that can do this work is where I am. So, thank you. Sorry.
Last night you mentioned about lawsuits you were involved with, and I'm curious to know
how many of these milestones with getting the dams agreed to be removed are product of lawsuits, and then also with the new listing of the Spring Run Chinook, has that been utilized in legislation for legal purposes to help fight more because of the PSA and all that stuff?
So I was involved in 2 lawsuits on Klamath dam removal, and they were both related to toxic algae coming from the dams and whether or not that was a nuisance situation. And we did win one of them. We got toxic algae listed as a pollutant under the 303D list, which was major because for people who are really like technical, when you do some kind of big project like this, you need a 401 water quality certification. And there were 2 big hammers for Klamath dam removal. And one of them was proving that the salmon were above the dams in the first place, you know, for the ESA consultation. And so making sure those fish ladders were there economically is what kind of broke the Klamath dam removal economically, is what made it too expensive for Pacific Corp to want to keep the dams. But the other major hammer was that Pacific Corp is causing a nuisance water quality situation and would not be able to get their 401 certification if we could prove it was their fault. And so the lawsuit over the 303D listing was really helpful on that because now toxic algae toxin, microcystin, is listed as a pollutant in the Klamath River. So, you know, the toxic algae in the Klamath River is some years 14 times what is okay for skin contact under the World Health Organization. The whole river turns green. Like, if you haven't seen it, it's crazy disgusting. It smells like dead bodies, you know, the river, which is like so important to everyone here. So I think that lawsuit was really effective because of the 401 certification process. There is now licenses for dam removal that have been licensed. Like, there is actually 401 certifications for dam removal, but I think it would have been really hard for Pacific Corp to get the certifications to keep the dams in place. They had all these crazy schemes to like put like massive amount of solar aerators in the reservoirs and all kinds of crazy things like curtains at every release, which actually helped a little bit, but not to the point where they could have gotten their Clean Water Act certification. But, you know, meanwhile, in other rivers where people weren't doing this work, they have similar issues, and still under the Ferc process, people got their certification because there wasn't like advocates actually fighting on the same level. So the other lawsuit we filed actually didn't really go anywhere. It was a tort lawsuit for toxic algae nuisance. And really it didn't go anywhere because tort law is really messed up and meant for corporations, not normal people. But there was also this whole Federal Power Act hearing that I wasn't involved with, where they changed, and you know about that more. Do you want to just say something about that quickly?
Where the Energy Security Act challenge of when the federal agencies actually began to get on board with supporting dam removal, they issued permits for mandatory conditions that really broke the feasibility of the project to be relicensed for Pacific Corp. And the law was changed so that folks could challenge that, the licensee could challenge the 4Es and Section 18, Ferc speak. And there was a whole big quasi-judicial litigation effort that had to be prepared to defend the agency's decision to effectively break the backs of the economics of the project. And
It was a fish ladder fight.
that's Section 18, right?
Yeah. Not everyone speaks Ferc.
4E for that matter. And the agencies hung together, and our lawyers worked with the agency lawyers and successfully defended the agency's decisions in a quasi-judicial proceeding in front of FERC that was, the judge was a Coast Guard admiral from the Judge Advocate's office, and because the Department of Commerce, National Human Service, was involved, so anyhow, it was a big drama, a big deal. It really turned the corner. I mean, the turning of the corner took a while because you had to get federal agencies had to have the states in support. But once that happened, Klamath watershed needs healing, and we're one place. But this is the outlet.
Yeah, we're gonna have a big party, that's for sure. Thank you. Yeah, I knew about the hearing, but that's the other thing. It's not all lawsuits. Some of these things are like procedural hearings that are
There's
insane.
been other lawsuits that we don't have time to talk about, not the actual talk.
Oh, and on the spring Chinook, it's only listed in California at this point. There's a petition in front of the feds, but they haven't ruled on the petition as of now. They're supposed to do any day, aren't they? Maybe this is my intro to John.
I actually got one question. You talked about invisible fish kill. Like a lot of people may not understand that term. It's kind of so we hear the term invisible fish kill, which really happens in the Klamath every year, like in the summer. It's a term meaning like basically there's a commercial dollar sign on a fish this big, right? There is not on a fish this big. There's no dollar sign on a fish this big. So when these fish die, they kind of go unsaid. And they deteriorate so fast over time from people, they just disappear fast. So hence invisible. But it's kind of weird that common sense tells you what? It takes a fish this big to get to the dollar sign, right? So it's so crazy that people don't worry about this. So this right here, we're talking millions of them, like a year sometimes back. Imagine if that was a dollar. People don't even realize that. Juveniles are more, they're the most important thing. Fish habitat, cool water, take care of the babies. And yeah, invisible fish kill, no dollar sign on babies.
All right, well, John, do you want to come up? I think we're supposed to introduce each other, but maybe you can explain your credentials and all that, because I don't actually know. John is the smartest fisheries person around. Besides Ken.
John Coffey.
Okay, I'm John Grubon. I worked in the Forest Service for 34 years. The first 6 years were working in the Forest Sciences Lab up in Dallas. I was in the unit that looked at the effects of land management on fisheries and riparian values. So that gave you a head start. When I came to this job here in management, I had to realize understanding the impact of the effect on the water. You got the Klamath Basin is probably one of the most productive salmon streams on the west coast historically. It started to decline early in the 1900s. Root problem noticed it. There was a fishery scientist named Snyder in 1930 who said, if they ever dam the Klamath River, that could be the extinction of salmon. The warning signs were out there even that early. Peter Moyle also is pretty involved with alerting people that they're losing our salmon. Publication he put out, Save Our Salmon Too, Fish in Hot Water, and gives a good thumbnail sketch of all the factors that are stressing out our salmon population. So the big picture, in my mind, the big picture of restoration of the Klamath Basin is kind of seen on this map here. But the Klamath Basin is a huge watershed. It goes from all the way out here. It's really two worlds because the western part of the Klamath watershed is all mountains, and the water runs off really quickly. Geologically, hydrologically, culturally, economically, the western part of the watershed is very different than the eastern part. But the strategy right now is all the wild fish are down here in the Klamath Mountains. And the Klamath Mountains are not, if you look at the whole Klamath watershed, Klamath Mountains is marginal habitat compared to what the Forest Landscape put in. Or the Scott Valley, the Shasta Valley, would drain and channelize the river. So the strategy we're working on right now is like try to improve the habitat where we still have wild fish, which is the Western Klamath Mountains, which is marginal habitat historically, and the Scott and Shasta Valley. And I say that these were marginal habitats historically because these streams around here are really high energy. They don't have a lot of floodplain habitat. When the winter comes up, the water's high, it just washes the fish out. There's not a lot of habitat left before we winter. So the basic idea is maintain, restore your fish, keep fish populations healthy here, colonize the rest of the nation. And the reason that it's marginal habitat here compared to the Shasta, Scott, and the upper Klamath where the fish can't sit now is that in the wintertime, when the flows came up in the Scott, Shasta, and upper Klamath, the fish could get out of the high water, excuse me, they could get out of the high water block and go out into the woods and the wetlands and the woodland wetlands and survive. So there's a lot more intrinsic potential for production of food.
I can hear you. It's because I'm wearing this. Okay.
The strategy here is to maintain our wild fish populations until we can get the dams